Hey all my Crimsonites, and welcome to the Crimson Cure channel, where we embrace our femininity, increase our womanly value, and celebrate our brothers. So join me on our feminine journey to learn, heal, and grow. Hey there, my Crimsonites, and welcome to the Crimson Cure channel. I'm your hostess, femininity coach, and author of The Crimson Cure, and this is my perspective. So I got a video for you. I want you to listen real carefully at this video because we actually got a lot to talk about here, but I'm gonna go ahead and play it. Just listen real careful.
Drastically after I did so much cheating on my husband. And let me tell you something, you better believe what goes around comes around. But it don't always come around the same way you gave it. Cheated on this man so many times, I can't even count. You better believe I suffer the consequences behind that. And let me tell you what God will do. God will sit you down. My friends say stuff like, girl, you got it made. You know what I'm saying? You got a man that do for you. You doing this, you doing that. You can do what you want to do. Girl, I suffered a lot of consequences. I became homeless after I cheated so much. I dealt with a permanent injury. I'm dealing with a permanent injury. Right now, y'all don't know this, but I use a walker to this day. God had to sit me down. I'm telling you, my life went to shambles. I suffered so many losses because of the things that I was doing. And the biggest loss was the fact that I destroyed my marriage with my kid's father. He was a provider. That man used to do everything for me, y'all. It's important, fellas, for y'all to give y'all wives the attention that she needs. Because at the end of the day, when we start yearning for that attention, we will seek it elsewhere. That's God in the truth. He didn't have to seek nothing from nowhere else. Every single one that he was getting from me. And baby, I was a one that what I do. So I'm gonna tell you.
Now, at first it sounded as if she was taking some accountability for her own actions. She was saying, you know, I cheated and I paid the consequences for doing that. It wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. I'm actually getting my karma from destroying my marriage, for betraying my husband, for dishonoring my vows, dishonoring the marriage, dishonoring the whole entire relationship. And to say it's crazy because she was like, I cheated so many times I can't even count like how many men. Anyway, I'm not even gonna go down that rabbit hole. And so at first it sounded as if she was taking ownership of her behavior and how it was her behavior that broke the marriage, and you know how she's actually suffering from having made those decisions. She even in the midst of it says, you know, he was doing everything for me. He was doing, but then the big accountability dodge at the end. Fellas, pay attention to your wife because she'll seek it elsewhere, blah, 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 blah. Ma'am, that's not the point. That's not even the point. That wasn't the reason why you were cheating. When you can sit somewhere online and tell people that you cheated so many times, you can't even count how many times you betrayed that man and betrayed that marriage and dishonored him and yourself, then that wasn't about seeking some attention that your husband wasn't giving you. That was about being a whore and you wanting to have other men. That didn't have, trying to make it about him and what he was unable to do or where he lacked in the relationship, trying to make that on him. And then that's why you were somewhere trying to get your needs met elsewhere, trying to make that about him. We're not even going to play that game. We're not even going to play that game because that ain't even the story you told. That's not even the story you told. You didn't even say, man, you know what I'm saying? My husband was always da 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 da, and I cheated one time, and he found out, you know, and the only reason I went over there was because blah 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 blah, you know, and I felt really bad because, you know, I really shouldn't have, you know, betrayed my marriage like that. We should have worked it out. You know, I should have found another way to even get through to my husband or whatever. That ain't the story you told. You said out your mouth that he was basically doing everything that a husband should be doing. There's always, let me say this. There's always going to be something that your spouse lack, because nobody can have everything to 100%. People have strengths and weaknesses. So your spouse is going to have something that they're really good at, that they're really strong at in the relationship. They're going to have aspects of the relationship where they're really solid. And then there are going to be other aspects of the relationship where they're not so solid. That might be the Achilles heel for them, might be difficult for them. Now, sometimes those things are critical. Whatever is their Achilles heel might actually be critical to whether the relationship work or not, right? When those things are critical to whether the relationship succeeds or fails, and that those things happen to be the other person's Achilles heel, and you're already married, you already committed, you already have children, you already building a life, then it is worth it to now try to see if you can shore up the weak point in the marriage. So maybe communication is a weak point, because failure to communicate or bad communication will definitely ruin a marriage. I don't care what the other good points are. If the communication is really bad, then that's going to break the underpinnings of the relationship. That's going to break the foundation of it eventually, whether fast or slow. So you might want to look into that, because if you and your spouse don't communicate well, often there are lots of misunderstandings. Often there may be even arguments. Sometimes it's not even the arguments. That's not what makes the bad communication. But if things are unclear, sometimes people are unclear with what they say. They're unclear in their intent. They're unclear. You know what I'm saying? They speak in a way that always leaves doubt, or always leaves room for a lot of misinterpretation of what they said. That's also unclear communication. That's also bad communication. So it doesn't have to be we always arguing and fighting. That doesn't have to be the marker of bad communication. You may never really raise your voice or argue or fight, but that doesn't mean that the communication is good. Because again, if there are often a lot of misunderstandings, often a lot of, well, I said this. Well, no, you didn't. Well, you know what I'm saying? Well, why would you do this? Well, you didn't tell me. And if it's a lot of that, then there's bad communication. That somewhere along the line, the communication has broken down, right? So that's just one example of something that, if that's the Achilles heel of one or both, that needs to be seen to quickly, because it will dictate whether or not a relationship succeeds or fails. Okay? Because at some point, the communication is going to be so broken that we can't even move forward as a couple, because the communication is too bad, right? Other things may be affection, could be an Achilles heel of somebody. You know what I'm saying? I'm not very affectionate. I don't really like, you know what I'm saying, a lot of cuddling, or a lot of, and maybe the other person do. They like being touched and kissed and held, and you know what I'm saying, and things of that nature. That you might want to see to that, right? Even if you're the person that don't like a lot of hugging and kissing and touching and cuddling, and your spouse does, you're going to have to meet in the middle for that. So you're going to have to do more cuddling than you want to. And the other person is going to have to understand that they may not get as much cuddling as they would like. So at some point, you got to meet in the middle and say, okay, even though I'm not a real super touchy-feely person, you can't just X the other person out. Well, I'm not a really touchy-feely person. That doesn't give you the green light to never show affection to that person. That doesn't give the green light. Like it's not okay. It's really not okay. The other person may say, oh, okay, it's okay, but they really do want that. They really do want, because that lets them know that you care about them. That's how they interpret that. You may not need that, but the other person do. So being in a relationship is all about understanding the other person's needs as well as your own. As well as your own. Not in abandonment of your own needs, but as well as. So yeah, I'm aware of what I need in a relationship, and that's fine. But I also need to be aware of what my spouse needs in a relationship as well. And if both people are making a commitment to not only be aware of their own personal needs, but also be aware and attentive to the other person's needs, however they need you to show up, then that is where the bond of the relationship is actually built. But on the same token, when you're not getting your needs properly met, the first thing to do is not to go outside of your marriage to go get that need met, especially if you have not addressed that within your relationship. Because even if you go outside to get a need met, you still want the need met by the person you with. So it's still going to drive you crazy. You still going to want the need met by them. It doesn't matter if somebody else does it. So if you not getting the amount of sex that you want, let's say you sex starved in a relationship, and I mean really sex starved, like it only happened a couple of times a month or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And let's say you don't address it with your spouse, you just go somewhere else and get the sex done. Okay, you get the monkey off your back, but that doesn't do anything to fix the issue of why there's a lack of intimacy in your marriage, because you still gonna want that though. You still want that though. You still gonna be mad at that. You still gonna be upset that why isn't it happening here? Even though I may go get it somewhere else, that's neither here nor there. Why is it not happening here? You're gonna have to fix that. You're gonna have to fix that. So if there is an emotional, you know what I'm saying, like disconnect in your marriage, and let's say you go somewhere else to try to get the emotional connection, you may get that feeling, but at the same time, you're going to be trying to figure out why I can't get it here though with this person. So going out to get your emotional needs met by somebody else doesn't rectify the fact that you're not getting your emotional needs met by the person that you really want to meet them. You want that person to meet those needs. You don't necessarily want the other person or whoever else to meet the need for you. Especially if you ain't really addressed it. Because it's one thing to say, my need ain't being met, you need to meet it. That's not necessarily addressing it either. Because sometimes you need to find out, why is the need not getting met? What's the problem? What's the holdup? What's going on? Why is there an emotional disconnect? Why is there an intimate disconnect? Why is there a communication disconnect? Why? Especially if that we used to have that problem, and now we do got that problem. So now what happened in our relationship that was the turning point that made a non-issue and now an issue? That's all part of working your relationship out. That's all part of it. Because everybody not going to be able to do everything perfectly. And you know what I'm saying? So you can't make it about the other person like she did. She made her cheating about her husband and the attention that he, quote unquote, didn't give her. And I don't buy that for a second. Because sometimes you just doing what you want to do because you want to do it. It don't have nothing to do with the lack of the other person. Sometimes the other person isn't lacking. Sometimes the other person is not, there is not such a severe lack of whatever it is in a relationship that you think you need to go somewhere else and get it met somehow, somewhere else. That's not always the case either. Sometimes you're just doing what you want to do. Right? She's a cheater because she's a cheater. Not because the man did something or didn't do something. Sometimes that's just the case. Sometimes a man is a cheater just because he's a cheater. The woman is not lacking anything. She's not giving him sex. She's not giving him femininity. She's not giving him attention. He getting all of that from the person that he is in the relationship with. And he also decided, you know what? That's not enough. That's not enough. I'm going to go somewhere else and get it too. And it doesn't have nothing to do with her. Nothing to do with what she's not doing. right? So she tried to make this about fellas, get the attention. Like, we don't need a PSA from you. You a serial cheater. You're a consistent vow breaker. You a consistent oath breaker. You consistently betrayed your husband. Don't nobody need no PSA from you about that. Keep it to your consequences and the karma that you reaped. You reaping what you sow. Keep the conversation to I'm reaping what I sowed. I sowed discord and disloyalty and dishonor, you know what I'm saying, in my marriage, and I broke my marriage based on those things. And now my life is not very good because I'm actually reaping what I sowed. Keep the conversation where it needs to be. Try to make it to be somebody else's fault. You made those decisions. Every time you decided to lay with another man or do whatever it was you was doing with another man, that was on you. That was on you. Because if you were unhappy, if you were that unhappy with your husband and he was that, you know what I'm saying, like lacking and all of that type of stuff, maybe you should have went to your husband and maybe you should have tried therapy or counseling. And if that didn't work, maybe you should have told your husband, hey, I'm not happy and I'm not able to maintain this relationship. It would have been, you still would have broke your marriage, but at least you wouldn't have been betraying him all throughout. Jump down in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe to the channel if you have not. Once again, I'm your hostess, The Crimson Cure, and this was my perspective. Bye-bye, Crimsonites.